here's a funny question. How has entrepreneurship made you a better parent? It's kind of an oxymoron because in many ways it hasn't. But if I'm going to pick a few things that I've been able to take from being an entrepreneur and applying it to parenthood in a way that I may not traditionally have done, I came up with 3 things. So number one is in running your business, there's going to be a lot of areas that you're not always going to know the answer to. And I've gone through some great leadership training courses where they really teach you it's okay to be vulnerable and not always know the answer. And so if you take that same concept and apply it to being a parent, you don't always have to know the answer or how to deal with a particular problem. And I think that as I've taken that into my own kids' life, there's a level of understanding that I'm still trying to figure this out too, and it opens the lines of communication up with your child a bit because you're not dictating that you know all the answers or that they can't think on their own. Sometimes you have to come to decisions and solutions together. So I feel like it's actually helped my children understand that they can think through their own problems, and I don't always have to be the one coming in with the answer. So it's been a great epiphany for me to apply to being a parent. The next one would be motivating. So it's really easy to forget that you actually have to motivate your children to do things. But if you think about an entrepreneur environment where they're leading teams and in many cases trying to convince people to march up hills with them, the way that you show up to those teams can have like the greatest impact. So if I go into work and I have a bad attitude or bring like a negative presence into the environment, the whole team feeds off that negative environment, and it actually can change their mood and the attitude that they're going to bring to the work they're doing. And it's interesting if you apply the same concept to your children. The attitude that I bring in, if I'm coming in and I'm being demanding of them or telling them stuff that they do wrong, which I would never, ever, ever do in a work environment, and I switch it to be a bit more motivational, it's amazing the way that they change and the way that they bring themselves to the situation. Again, they feel way more empowered and don't feel like they're letting you down. It becomes more about letting themselves down. And then the last one, and this is actually parenting, like not parenting individuals, but a bit more of like a parenting across the board tactic. So with strategic planning, if you think about it from a work environment, you can't take on a million things at once and expect to be successful. You have to be a bit more selective with what you're going to spend your time on and how you're going to get there. And so I think the same thing, if you apply it to your family, it's not uncommon for a family to be like, oh, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And all of a sudden you've taken on way too much and you can't get any of it done. So like a perfect example, I started off the year saying, all right, I wanted to have a social media plan in place, and I wanted to have like a church plan in place, and I wanted to have a financial plan in place, and I wanted to build a pool, and I wanted to change some decoration stuff around the house, and I wanted to do this with one daughter and this with another. And all of a sudden I had like a list of 20 things that were on my list to do that affected my family. And I realized pretty quickly that I'm like one person. I also am working. There's no way that I am going to be able to get that all done if I don't deprioritize some things and figure out what's most important. So one of the things that I've recently started is trying to be a bit more selective on the bigger things that I'm going to put on our family's planning, and deprioritizing some of the other things to do a bit later when I have more time for them. So that's very high level. Obviously there's a bit more to like the tools that I'm using to actually do that. But those were the 3 things that came to mind that have made me a better parent through running a business. Thanks.